A weathered mare stumbled through the dusty auction ring with cloudy white eyes that never focused on a single face. People laughed openly as the auctioneer struggled to convince anyone to raise a hand. Some called her useless. Others whispered she belonged in a pasture until the end of her days. Then a quiet black boy with only $40 in his pocket stepped forward and bought her. Every person watching believed they had just witnessed the worst purchase of the year. None of them could have imagined that the blind old mare carried a bloodline worth millions, a forgotten legacy that would transform not only one struggling family but an entire community desperate to believe that miracles still happened. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us compassion is never wasted. 19-year-old Everett Lawson had spent nearly every day of his life working under the blazing afternoon sun on a worn-out farm that seemed determined to give less every year. His grandfather had once owned healthy horses, thriving crops, and enough livestock to keep every field alive with activity, but years of drought, rising costs, and one heartbreaking loss after another slowly erased everything they had built. By the time Everett inherited responsibility for the property, only a few acres remained productive, the barn leaned with age, and every fence seemed held together by hope more than nails. Still, Everett refused to abandon the place where generations of his family had poured their sweat into the soil. He believed that land remembered love, even when people forgot it. His neighbors admired his determination but quietly questioned his judgment. Whenever an old tractor broke down or another fence collapsed, they wondered how much longer he could survive. When word spread that he had spent his last $40 on a blind mare nobody wanted, even the people who respected him shook their heads with disappointment. They believed desperation had finally clouded his judgment. The mare was frail, her coat faded from years of neglect, and scars crossed her body like faded maps of forgotten hardships. She flinched whenever unfamiliar sounds echoed across the farm, carefully placing each hoof as though every step required complete trust in a world she could no longer see. Everett named her Eleanor because something about her calm spirit reminded him of quiet strength that never demanded attention. Instead of treating Eleanor as an investment, Everett treated her as family. Every morning beneath bright blue skies, he brushed her coat until it shined softly in the sunlight. He spoke gently while leading her across safe paths he carefully cleared of rocks and fallen branches. He learned the rhythm of her breathing, the slight tilt of her ears whenever she recognized his footsteps, and the peaceful way she rested whenever she felt his hand against her neck. He expected nothing in return except knowing she would never again experience abandonment. Months passed, and nothing changed financially. Bills continued piling higher. Equipment continued breaking. Some afternoons Everett skipped meals so he could afford hay for Eleanor and feed for the few remaining animals. More than once he questioned whether kindness alone could ever be enough to rescue someone from hardship, but every time doubt settled into his heart, Eleanor would gently nuzzle his shoulder as though reminding him that compassion never truly disappeared. It always planted invisible seeds. One bright spring afternoon, a retired veterinarian named Graham Whitmore happened to stop by after noticing Eleanor grazing peacefully beside the road. Graham had spent decades studying historic horse bloodlines before retirement, and one unusual marking near Eleanor's shoulder instantly caught his attention. He politely asked Everett where the mare had come from. When Everett explained she had been purchased at a neglected livestock auction for $40, Graham's expression changed completely. He examined Eleanor with extraordinary care. Beneath years of poor nutrition and neglect, he recognized subtle physical characteristics almost forgotten by modern breeders. There was something remarkably familiar about the shape of her head, the angle of her shoulders, and an old identification tattoo hidden beneath her faded mane. Graham asked permission to research her history. Everett agreed, believing it would simply satisfy an old man's curiosity. Over the following weeks, Graham traveled through county records, aging breeding registries, handwritten journals, and forgotten photographs preserved inside dusty archives. Every discovery revealed another astonishing connection. Eleanor was not an ordinary mare. Decades earlier, she had been born into one of the rarest heritage bloodlines in North America, descending directly from horses renowned for intelligence, endurance, gentle temperaments, and exceptional genetics. That bloodline had almost completely disappeared after a devastating ranch fire destroyed records and scattered surviving animals across countless states. Everyone assumed the line had ended forever. Everyone except Graham now knew that Eleanor represented its final living connection. The announcement spread across farming communities faster than harvest news. People who had laughed at Everett suddenly arrived in polished trucks carrying business cards and generous smiles. Wealthy breeders requested meetings. Agricultural historians visited the farm. Genetic researchers asked permission to document Eleanor's ancestry. Journalists photographed the once-forgotten mare standing peacefully beside the young man who had seen value where everyone else had seen failure. Offers poured in. Some wanted to purchase Eleanor immediately for astonishing sums. Others proposed exclusive breeding contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Still others promised national recognition if Everett sold complete ownership. The amount eventually discussed reached beyond anything Everett had ever imagined possible. Yet something inside him hesitated. Every offer treated Eleanor like a prize waiting to be claimed. Everett remembered the frightened animal who had stepped off the auction trailer with empty eyes and trembling legs. He remembered brushing away dirt from her neglected coat, feeding her before feeding himself, and promising she would never again be discarded because she had become inconvenient. Money could rebuild his farm. But loyalty meant even more. Rather than selling Eleanor outright, Everett partnered with respected conservation specialists determined to preserve the bloodline ethically. Together they established a heritage breeding program focused not on profit alone but on protecting genetics, educating future generations, and ensuring every foal would receive proper care. Investors initially questioned why Everett refused quicker fortune, yet his integrity inspired confidence. Donations arrived from people who admired his principles more than his remarkable discovery. The neglected farm slowly transformed beneath warm afternoon sunlight. New fencing replaced broken rails. Fresh barns rose where collapsing structures once stood. Veterinary students volunteered to learn about heritage horses. Local schools organized daytime educational visits so children could understand both responsible animal care and the importance of preserving agricultural history. Families who had never spoken before gathered together, united by admiration for a quiet mare who had unknowingly carried history inside her veins. Ironically, the people who had mocked Everett struggled most with their own regrets. Among them was Preston Hale, the livestock dealer who had purchased Eleanor cheaply before sending her to auction. For months he avoided driving past Everett's farm, embarrassed by the memory of dismissing both the horse and the young man. Eventually, carrying more humility than pride, Preston walked through the front gate one bright afternoon. His shoulders sagged beneath the weight of mistakes that money alone could never erase. He admitted he had ignored Eleanor's condition because he assumed she no longer mattered. He confessed that years of chasing quick profits had blinded him far more than Eleanor's cloudy eyes had ever limited her. He expected anger, resentment, perhaps even humiliation. Instead, Everett simply thanked him for coming. Forgiveness surprised Preston more deeply than any accusation could have. That conversation changed both men. Preston began volunteering with neglected livestock rescues, helping abandoned animals find homes instead of treating them as worthless inventory. He often told people that one blind mare had opened his own eyes better than success ever had. Meanwhile, Eleanor flourished beyond every expectation. Although she would never regain her eyesight, she learned every corner of the farm through familiar scents, gentle guidance, and complete trust in the people surrounding her. Watching children carefully stroke her neck became one of the property's greatest joys. She remained patient, peaceful, and remarkably affectionate, reminding every visitor that physical limitations never determined true worth. Years later, healthy descendants of Eleanor's bloodline grazed across protected fields under careful stewardship. Agricultural universities partnered with the preservation program. Heritage Horse Organization celebrated what many called one of the most remarkable rediscoveries in modern breeding history. Financial success followed naturally, but Everett measured wealth differently. He saw it in restored friendships, grateful families, rescued animals, thriving fields, and children leaving the farm believing compassion could accomplish extraordinary things. One afternoon, standing beside Eleanor as a gentle breeze swept through golden grass, Everett reflected on how close the world had come to losing something priceless simply because people judged by appearances. If he had listened to laughter instead of his heart, Eleanor's remarkable legacy might have disappeared forever. The greatest treasure had never been hidden inside expensive papers or impressive pedigrees. It had been hidden inside an act of mercy that cost only $40 but demanded the courage to believe value still existed where everyone else saw failure. Before this story comes to its close, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us about a time when someone believed in you, or when you chose to believe in someone the world had already given up on. Your story may become the encouragement another person desperately needs today. Eleanor eventually grew old, surrounded not by neglect but by laughter, gentle hands, open pastures, and grateful hearts. She never understood the headlines, the awards, or the fortune her forgotten bloodline helped create. What she understood was kindness. She recognized familiar footsteps, trusted loving hands, and lived every remaining day knowing she was safe. Everett rebuilt more than a farm. He restored faith in a community that had almost forgotten the power of compassion. People no longer remembered him as the young man who wasted $40 on a blind mare. They remembered him as the young man who saw priceless worth where everyone else saw nothing at all. His story became a lasting reminder that the greatest legacies often arrive quietly, wrapped in brokenness, waiting for one courageous heart willing to give them a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this story remind you that kindness is never an expense, forgiveness is never weakness, and sometimes the world's greatest treasures are discovered only by those willing to love what everyone else has overlooked.